Hello. Sorry, I almost knocked over a glass. That's a good way to start a podcast, isn't it?
Yeah, never mind. Right, ready?
Yeah.
So, Abi, how are you? I'm so pleased that you've agreed to come on my podcast. You've been eating your dinner. You're all prime and ready. Are you okay?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. I just got back from the gym. Yeah. No, I'm good.
And
Had a bit of sorry.
Let's start again.
Okay.
Hi, Abi. How are you doing? You all right?
I'm doing well, thank you, Dave. How are you?
I'm fine. It's quite a late one for me. I'm normally asleep by now, 9 o'clock at night. So you're a late bird.
Yeah, I'm not a late bird at all. I'm an early morning person. I'm up early in the morning, straight down the gym. But I also go to the gym in the evening, so we had to do this a bit later. Because it turns out addiction transference is real. So I don't smoke crack anymore, but I do go to the gym twice a day. So.
Well, that's a little bit healthier for you, isn't it? Anyway.
Yeah, much better option.
So I was looking through my notes earlier, and I see that you were born in Berkshire, lovely part of the world, and then you moved to London, right? And so these are life stories, and I love to get straight in there. So how was it for you growing up, young lady?
I was a really sad child. A really, really sad child, a really depressed teenager. I felt very misunderstood. Much like I do now. I find it very hard to relate to people. And as a kid and as a teenager, I had very, very low self-esteem. I hated myself. A self-love journey is something that I've only recently started. I'm very much at the beginning of a self-love journey. But yeah, I just absolutely hated myself as a teenager. I always had lots of friends, and I was very popular. I was very popular, Dave. But I hated myself. Like I said, I got on other people, but I didn't understand other people. I masked a lot, so I started drinking from quite an early age first of all, to forget how much I disliked myself, and then also as a way to interact with the world. So I always felt very withdrawn, and I felt very difficult. Other people seem to just kind of go about their day effortlessly, and they could just talk to people, and they could just get involved with stuff. And I struggled so much with that.
Right.
So when I drank,
Abi,
it just moved. Yeah.
Abi, I don't know what's happening, but the internet is shit.
Really?
It's breaking up right and centre.
Really?
Let me open my door though. Because mine's normally spot on. I've got 74 meg download and whatever. So, but it's just not. And your video as well is literally pausing left, right, and centre.
Really? I can take my Wi-Fi off and see if it's any better with. Hold on, let me take my Wi-Fi off and see if I can do it with my phone data.
Yeah, let me check mine. See what mine's like. Make sure it's not mine. Because otherwise, no point going on with it because it'd be awful. Mine's 74. Yeah, so mine's
right. How's that?
Well,
is that any better?
Let's try.
Okay.
Okay.
How does it? Is it breaking up still?
No.
Okay.
Let's try.
That's so weird. Sorry.
Trial and error. Let's try for 5 minutes. Otherwise, we might have to reschedule because, sometimes it's shit one night and then it's all right again, isn't it?
Yeah, it's weird. I don't usually have Wi-Fi problems, but
no.
Yeah, sometimes I guess it's just shit.
Right. Let's try again.
Okay.
Right. Ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Right. Hi, Abi. How are you today?
Hello, Dave. I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm fine. You've just come back from the gym. It's 9:15 at night. I'm normally snoring and you're raring to go, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm all hopped up on pre-workout, so I'm keeping you up.
Oh, that's all right. I love the fact that you've agreed to come on my podcast because we actually first met on the boat party, didn't we? And we hadn't really spoken before that. And I just knew you'd be an amazing guest. So thank you.
Oh, thanks for inviting me.
Well, you grew up in Berkshire, right? And you know that these are life stories. So let's crack on with that one.
hmm
What was it like for you growing up?
Um, Growing up, I was a really sad kid. I was really and a depressed teenager. Um, I did not feel very happy. Like I always struggled. Um, Always struggled with my mental health. I felt very misunderstood as a teenager. It felt very difficult to relate to other people. Like as a kid, like I always had lots of friends growing up, and I always had like a social life and stuff. But I didn't even though I had friends, I didn't understand anyone. Um, I found it really hard to relate to people. I found it difficult to just interact with the world. Like other people my age when I was a kid, I remember just like, and I still do this now, like watching other people just kind of effortlessly go about their days and they can just exist in the world and they're relaxed and they can interact with people. And as a kid and even now, I just felt so withdrawn. I felt like it was a struggle for me to to relate to anyone really. And that was one of the reasons why I drank, because I felt like such a disconnect from the world when I drank. It made me feel part of something. And also, as a kid, I always had really low self-esteem. Like I still do now. Like I'm only at the beginning of my self-love journey. I'm only very much right at the beginning, and it's still something I struggle with. But yeah, I always just absolutely hated myself, like, and I was beating myself up all day. Like I was absolutely my worst enemy, which is another big reason for my drinking and drug use, because it made me forget. Like when I was intoxicated, I forgot how much I hated myself.
God, how old were you when you started to feel like this then?
I like very, very young, very young. I always felt like I didn't come from a very stable family life, and I always felt very unwanted. I remember when I was a kid, when I was like like 4 or 5, I remember banging my head against the wall. Like whenever I was angry or frustrated, I'd bang my head against the wall like violently, like as a form of self-harm. And then also because I didn't know how to express my emotions. And I was doing that from like 4 or 5 years old. Mm.
And how old were you when you started drinking then?
Like probably like 13, 14.
Yeah.
And then like as soon as I started drinking, like it just masked all those feelings, like all those feelings of not feeling good enough, of hating myself, of not being able to relate to anyone else. As soon as I drank, that just went away. So I was like, oh, that's great. I'm going to continue doing that.
Could you relate to anyone else, or did that just quieten down the voice in your head?
It's quieting down the voice, you know, and also I feel like when I had like drinking buddies, we'd connect on that level,
Yeah.
you know, like that was one of the things I was really worried about when I stopped drinking, that I wouldn't be able to connect with people anymore because I wouldn't like have drunken chats and drunken heart to hearts. And I was like, how do people like talk to each other when they're sober?
Yeah.
Like, how do you just have a conversation with someone, you know?
Especially if you do it from a younger age, because you form your identity. Like I've talked about it before. I think it's The Usual Suspects where they all had their name, didn't they? Mr. Pink, Mr. Black. And for me, I was never the fighter. I've talked about this before, but I was the drinker, Mr. Drink,
Yeah.
you know, and that was my identity of always being the one that would down the beers, fall over in the car park, or, you know, get
Yeah,
bit.
I was good time party girl.
Yeah.
That was my persona. Like, not a care in the world, like always up for a laugh. But really, I was dead inside and I hated myself and I was really depressed.
At the time you drank, though, it gave you the confidence. But when you came off the alcohol, did you feel worse about yourself?
Well, when I was drinking,
Yeah.
like when I said, what do you know what, Dave? I didn't sober up for about, like, I was drunk for about 10 years there.
Really?
Like, yeah, I was a daily drinker, I was a morning drinker. Like, yeah, I don't remember being sober for like the last 10 years, honestly, because every time like the alcohol started wearing off, then I would start feeling things again and feeling bad, and I didn't want that.
Oh, so
So
it really got rid of all of those feelings then. And
yeah, breakfast vodka like really, really helped me not be the quivering wreck of a human I was. And it worked for a little bit, for a very, very, very short time, until I became dependent on it.
did you like get a job, or how did you exist like financially in that?
I've always worked in hospitality. I worked in bars, I worked in restaurants. Yeah, I did bar work for years, and everyone was drunk, you know. I lived in Southeast Asia for 4 years, working in a bar, and that was absolute carnage. That was literally like we'd wake up and start drinking like as soon as we woke up, and then we'd work in the evening, and it was a very easy job. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I just have to. I had to charge my phone quickly. 2 seconds. I was going to plug it in. Oh my God, there's shit everywhere. Sorry, Dave. The editing work there for you. There we go. Okay. Okay, I'm plugged in.
So how old were you when you started traveling then? Because you've done a fair bit, haven't you?
Yeah. So I grew up in Berkshire. I had this like middle class upbringing where nobody spoke about their feelings and everyone was quietly depressed and addicted to alcohol rather than outwardly. And then I moved to London when I was 18, and then I worked in radio for a little bit, and then I became a club DJ, because that was also another job. Basically, when I was in my early 20s, I just wanted a job with the least amount of responsibility where I was able to drink. Like, that was my only criteria. I didn't care how much I was getting paid, essentially what I was doing, but my criteria was I don't have to do anything and I can drink. So a DJ was a really, really good for that. And then I lived in London until I was 23. And then I had like an epiphany, which is very similar to the epiphany that I had when I knew that I had to stop drinking, when I just knew that I had to get some. Living in London, and I just knew I had to leave. I was like, right, I have to go to Asia. And I booked a flight to Thailand, and then I lived out of a backpack for the following 10 years.
Wow. And that was that another running away thing?
It was. So escapism was a really, really massive thing for me. I didn't want to face my reality, didn't want to face my problems, didn't want to face myself. And I didn't want to have any responsibility. I didn't want to have to think. I didn't want to do anything. Like, I literally had no ambition. Like, all I wanted to do was travel, get drunk, do drugs, and have sex. Like, for me, those were my life goals, and that's all I cared about.
Well, there's probably a few people on here listening thinking that doesn't sound a bad option, actually, but we're not on here to talk about that. So was that, do you think, because when you moved to London, do you think your drinking got to such a level that you had to do something different? Like, where were you with your drinking when you had this epiphany? Was it like a real rock bottom?
No, it wasn't rock bottom at all. I was drinking a lot. I was taking a lot of drugs. I was in spending a lot of time in Camden. But I always knew that I drank differently to everyone else. Like, we'd have a house. Like, my friends that I hang around, like, that I still am friends with now. I've got like a really close friendship circle, and they've supported me like all the way through. But I always knew that I drank differently to them. So when we were in our early 20s, like they'd party too. We'd go out to like a warehouse rave or something, and then we'd be partying for that evening, and then in the morning they all would go to sleep, and I was like, no, I'm still going, and I'd be drinking. I'd carry on drinking. I'd just find someone else to drink with, even though they were all done. I was never done ever. I only stopped when I passed out, basically. So I always knew that I drank differently to other people, and I guess I think I probably got quite bored in London because I needed to take my escapism up a notch. I guess I was like getting a bit like stagnant, just going out in Camden with the same people. I was like, right, I need something more, and that's when I left.
So did you Google where can I?
Nah, I just went to Thailand. I'd seen the film The Beach, and I was like, I'm just going to Thailand.
Yeah. So were drugs involved like quite heavily here as well?
Well, yeah, but like, okay, so alcohol is my problem. Alcohol is what I am powerless against. Like, I cannot control alcohol at all. So drug taking was always a symptom of drinking. Like, if I took cocaine, it meant I could drink more. When I got drunk, when I was drunk all the time, I had no inhibitions, and I wanted to push myself further. I wanted to see how fucked up I could get, and then so drugs were like the next level up. But I wouldn't be at home and be like, oh, I really fancy a line of cocaine. Whereas I would be at home and be like, oh, I really fancy downing 3 bottles of wine.
Yeah.
But I did do a lot of drugs. Alcohol is my thing. Alcohol is my jam.
I've always said that myself. Like, I didn't really get into drugs, to be honest. But it's not an era thing as well, because I used to go out and see people like wiping their bloody nose and licking their flipping gums and whatever all the time. It's like, yeah, but I just never did anything to me because I knew the booze would do exactly what I wanted. I didn't think any more than that. But I'm grateful in a way that I didn't go down that road. But I've also heard that one or the other. Like, you have a drink, like a lad that works for me, he'll kill me. But yeah, he'd always have 3 or 4 beers. It's like ring the dealer. Do you know what I mean? So it was that thing. And then with me, about 2 a.m, I would just clap out and then like pass out or whatever. But yeah, I can understand with a coke that you just carry on and on. So
there'd be times where I remember this one house party. It was my 26th birthday. I got so drunk that I like passed out. The next thing I remember is my friends were waking me up by like stuffing cocaine up my nose, and then all of a sudden I was awake again and I was fine, and I drank for another like couple of days before I passed out again. Like,
jeez.
Yeah.
So when you was out in Asia and that, like, did you up your drinking and drugs a lot there?
Yeah, massively. Drugs were very readily available. So I lived in Laos for 4 years. It's just, there was a lot of opium out there. There was quite a bit of meth, and it's just like the crowds that I was hanging out with. I was hanging out with like backpackers, basically, other people like me who were running away from life, running away from problems, and also just wanted no responsibilities and wanted to get fucked up all the time. Yeah. So it was normalized with us, in our circle. It was normalized. We egged each other on. We encouraged each other. It was like, the more fucked up you could get, the more stupid shit you could do, like the more kudos you got, and yeah, it was wild, Dave.
Did you ever get into like conversations about why, or was it just complete no? Because like I've never been in that environment really. Do you know what I mean? Like I was the guy down the local, but was
Yeah.
it just avoided those conversations, or when you're absolutely smashed, you start getting into it?
They were completely avoided, those conversations. Like I think it was just like, it was obvious that every single one of us had problems. Like we're all running away from something. None of us were drinking like normal people. But it was like no one spoke about it. And I remember when I first started working in Asia, like I think I'd been basically I went to Laos and I visited this town, and I thought I was going to stay there for a couple of days and move on. And those 2 days turned into 4 years. I remember when I first got there, like in my first week, I made a joke about us being alcoholics. Now I was 23 at the time, so like very much did not think I was an alcoholic at that time, and didn't think I had a problem with alcohol. Maybe, well, I was going to say maybe I didn't, but I definitely did. And I made a joke about us being alcoholics, and I remember one of the girls said, "We don't say that word." Like, so it was like shut down immediately. And I remember she was so serious. Like, her tone changed completely, but like, we don't say that word. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then like never spoke about it again.
And do you know why? Was it just because it was not a spoken thing? Like we don't talk about.
Out of sight, out of mind. If we started talking about how we were all lunatics, that were drunk all the time, then we'd have to. Then it would become a problem. Like we'd be acknowledging the problem. We're acknowledging that there was a problem. But if nobody spoke about it, and like it was very much a culture of we're just having fun all the time. And if you're bringing down the mood, then you're out pretty much.
Oh God, that is absolute denial, isn't it?
Yeah, such denial. Do you know what? Do you remember the film The Beach?
Yeah.
Right, you know when they're in that community and one of them gets bitten by a shark and he's like dying, and he's bringing the mood down, and everyone's like, "Oh no, this is horrible." And they put him in like the woods to die, and they're like, "Oh yeah, out of sight, out of mind." And then all of a sudden, when he's dying, but they can't, but he's not around, everyone's in a good mood again. It was like that. Wow. It was like that. It's like if anyone was like bringing like causing drama or like or not having a good time, it was like, right, I can snap out of it, or you can't hang out with us anymore.
Wow, that's fascinating. So it's just like a constant trip, wasn't it?
Oh my God, yeah.
So how did you move on? What happened like after 4 years?
But I moved to Australia. So like obviously 4 years in one place. I did do a bit of traveling in between that.
Yeah.
But I went to and from places. I moved to Australia for 2 years because I felt like, oh, I need to move on. I need to do something different. It was like when I decided to go traveling in the first place. I was like, right, I need to change the scenery. I need to go do something different. Yeah. So I went to Australia for a couple of years. But the thing is, I was like, as soon as I got to Australia, I just drank in the same way I did when I was living in Southeast Asia. I was just in a different country, and it was still like a backpacking kind of community, you know. I did that, and then I went back to Southeast Asia, and then I met a man.
Uh-oh.
And then I moved to the States with that man, where it quickly became apparent that I was an unstable alcoholic who was very depressed, and basically just got blackout drunk every night and screamed at him. Like I was his holiday romance, and he took me back home to live with him in New York. And then very quickly things went south, and I was just screaming at him every night. So he was like, "Oh, you have to get out of my house! Like, you are unstable." So he kicked me out. He drove me to Newark Airport at like 4 o'clock in the morning, and he was like, "You have to leave." And then I moved to Canada because I had a visa for Canada. Moved to Canada, and I was like heartbroken. And so the way I dealt with my heartbreak was I started smoking crack Like, oh yeah, that'll make my problems better. That'll fix my broken heart. I'll just start smoking crack. You know, other people might, you know, get their hair cut to get over a breakup. I was like, nah, I'm gonna go move into a crack then. So I did that, and that was a very, very dark time in my life. Yeah.
Oh, darling,
Yeah.
it's getting worse. You know, the more it's getting worse, and running away more from all of it. Really, you know, your inner feelings and life.
Yeah.
And like, so the crack. How long did that go on for? Because that's a whole bloody new rabbit hole, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I went on like a 4-month crack bender. So it was like, do you know what? I feel like, I don't want to say I'm lucky, because no one wants to end up fucking sitting in a darkened room smoking crack with strangers for days on end, you know. But I did get out of it, and I wasn't in that place for a great deal of time. So I went on like a 4-month crack bender. I was living in Ottawa in Canada, and then I kind of like realized how shit everything was, and that I was smoking hard drugs, and that I was like, I was just fucked. I just wasn't where I wanted to be in life at all. So I moved again. So I ran away. I ran to Vancouver Island, where things progressively got more worse. Yeah, as soon as I got to Vancouver Island, I stopped smoking crack, but I didn't feel any better. I didn't feel any better about myself. My mental health issues were still there. I was still very depressed. I was still feeling very suicidal. I was basically, I'm like a pressure cooker, say. Like, I ignored all my mental health issues for so long. I ignored how much I hated myself, how depressed I was. So I just kept on running away. Physically, I'd run away to different countries. I wouldn't get close to anyone. And then like mentally, I was intoxicated all the time. So everything built up. So it was like a pressure cooker. Everything built up, and there was no release ever. And obviously I exploded, exploded in a mess of emotions. So I was in Vancouver Island, sorry. And I was working in a barbecue restaurant, and I was living in a trailer, and it was really miserable there. It was a tourist town that in the summer it was like really busy and like really like lively, but I was there in the winter, and it was just abysmal. It was raining all the time. It was really short days. No one was around, so I only had a couple of friends, and nothing was going on. And I just had it. I was so depressed. I hated myself so much. I hated my life. Hated what I was doing. So I was like, oh, do you know what? I just don't want to be here anymore. Like, I'm just gonna kill myself. I'm just gonna die. So that's what I did. I tried to kill myself, and then as a result of that, ended up in a psych ward. Turns out, if you try and kill yourself, you know, they don't just let you get on with things. You know, you have to go to psychiatric hospital. So this ambulance turned up, took me in the middle of the night to this, because it was on Vancouver Island. It was like this tiny little, like, it was a tiny tourist town that was away from everything else. The nearest psychiatric ward was like a 5-hour drive away. So this ambulance came and picked me up, and they gave me a bunch of sleeping pills, fell asleep, and 5 hours later woke up in this psych ward, and they gave me like these pajamas and these weird socks, and they were like, here, put this on. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess I just live in a psych ward in Canada now. And yeah, and I was there for like 3 days, and I was very confused. I didn't know what was going on, and I was like, wow, this is my life. Like, this is what it's come to. I'm in this wearing weird pajamas, talking to this strange Canadian doctor. I don't know where the fuck I am. Like, this is my life. I was 31 at the time. Like, all my friends who are the same age as me, they're all married and bought houses and stuff, and I'm in my weird pajamas. But that wasn't enough to like snap me out of it. That wasn't enough to stop me from drinking, or it wasn't enough for me to want to make any lifestyle changes. Like, I still I was still suicidal. I was like, oh damn, I can't believe I didn't succeed. You know, like I had no interest in bettering my life, so I just didn't want to be there. So as soon as I got home, back to my trainer, I went straight to the liquor store. Like as soon as I was like, oh thank God I'm out the psych ward. Now I can destroy my life even further with alcohol. Got like obliterated, and I guess it was like 2 weeks before I lost my job. I just went on a mad one day, and I drank a bottle of. So I was working in this barbecue restaurant. I drank a bottle of vodka on shift, so I just didn't care anymore.
Yeah.
Didn't care. And I just got so drunk. Then the owner of the restaurant came in, and I don't remember much because I was blackout, but I do remember him taking me into the kitchen, sitting me down, and he was just shouting at me. Like he was like pointing and talking to me, or shouting at me, telling me off. And I remember just like looking up at him like I was being told off by like I was a child and he was telling me off.
Yeah.
And then I went in for a meeting the next day, and he was like, I think you've got a problem with alcohol. And I was like, yeah, no shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Still wasn't enough though. Got drunk after the meeting.
Darling, honestly. So when you tried to kill yourself, how did they find you? Did you tell someone or?
Yeah, so I was like texting the guy I was seeing. I was texting him at the time.
Right.
And so I tried to hang myself. Well, no, I did hang myself. And he came in and got me down. And then called police, called an ambulance. But yeah.
Oh,
I remember him I remember hanging there, and he burst through the door. It was really dramatic.
Yeah.
And then he pulled me down.
This is like a bloody film. Like you're
I know.
and you're
I know.
31 years old up to now. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
So you drank the bottle of vodka and you lost your job.
Yeah.
Go on then.
And then all the news reports started talking about this virus from China. And then all of a sudden everything was shutting down and COVID was a thing. And everyone else lost their jobs at the same time. And then all the other British people were going home. You know, like a lot of the backpackers around the world were like, right, it's time to go home now because of the pandemic. And you know, it was a very uncertain time. No one knew what was going to happen. So that was my calling to go home. So I went back to the UK. That's the only reason I went back to the UK. If COVID hadn't happened, if the pandemic hadn't hit, then I would have still been out there. I wouldn't have given in. I wouldn't have given up. I would have stayed. I would have kept on traveling, kept on drinking. I'd probably be dead now, to be honest.
I was going to say.
Yeah, it was like that. It forced me to go home.
And where was home though in the UK?
Berkshire.
Oh, you
so I moved back in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went back to my mum's house in the house that I grew up in.
And how was that after all that?
Well, guess what I did when I got home? Started drinking, like literally as soon as I got to my mum's house full of alcohol. So I was like, right, banging.
Let's get on it.
Let's get on it. Like I was just like, I didn't have my mindset hadn't changed at all. All this stuff had happened. Like I lost my relationship because the guy in New York, I was really in love with him. I really treasured that relationship. All this stuff happened. I lost my relationship, ended up on crack, tried to kill myself, stayed in the psych ward, lost my job. All this stuff was happening, and none of it made me want to stop drinking, at all. Nothing. I didn't want to change. I don't know. I don't think I knew that I could, or if that was an option. I had absolutely no hope. There was not a glimmer of hope inside me. So when I got home back to my mum's house, I just carried on drinking. Just went on a bender again, and I was just so sad today. I was so sad. I was so depressed. I was just defeated. I just didn't want to be there at all. And then the strangest thing happened. Like I came off like this 2-week bender, and I was sitting on the end of my bed, and I was reflecting, because it was early pandemic. I was unemployed, had a lot of spare time, and I sobered up a little bit, and I was just reflecting on my life and all the shit that had happened, and how horrible and traumatic it had all been. And then just everything fell into place, everything clicked. Like literally, it was like in slow motion, just like everything just made sense in one moment. And I was like, oh my God, I have to stop drinking. Like if I want things to get better, then I have to stop drinking. And then I realized in that moment that I did want things to get better. Like I didn't want to die. I wanted, some small part of me wanted to fight and wanted things to get better. And for the first time in my entire life, I listened to that tiny little voice that said, like, it doesn't have to be this way. Things can change. And I just knew it was alcohol. Like if I took alcohol out of my life, then things will start to get better. And I haven't drank since then.
Wow, that sounds really spiritual, actually.
It was super spiritual.
Yeah, because that's what happened to me.
Yeah.
One day, yeah. I had a message. I'm not going to bore everyone by the same story, but it was literally a message that it's now or never kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? And it felt like someone plugged me into something, and it was like, right, here's some extra strength for you to get over this. Like that it was. And that was my day one.
Yeah.
Oh, Abby.
It's mad, isn't it?
Yeah, that's an incredible story. So when that happened, did you think, right, that is it? How am I going to do that? Or at that time, did you just think, right, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I am going to do it?
Yeah.
Was it?
I did.
Yeah. How did you go about it?
I didn't know what to do. All I knew was that I couldn't drink.
Yeah.
All I knew was that I couldn't have a drink. And so I just focused on that.
How was that though? Because you were drinking a load.
Well, I went through withdrawals, which was horrible, which was just awful. I didn't know at the time how dangerous it was to
stop.
Go through withdrawal, just to stop.
Yeah.
Like now, when I speak to anyone about it, I tell them, always see a doctor, because it can be fatal if you just
see
go cold turkey. Yeah, but I didn't know that. Like, because I didn't know anything. I didn't know how people got sober. I knew that Alcoholics Anonymous was a thing that existed.
Yeah.
So I knew that like people can live without drinking, but I didn't know how you do it. Like, I didn't know where to start. So I was like, okay, where I'm going to start is just don't drink. And so I did that, and then I went, oh my God, I had a week, right? I was in bed for a week. I remember I was watching, I just watched Parks and Recreation. Do you know that sitcom?
Yeah.
It was on Netflix. There's like 7 seasons, and I just watched that for a week. And I was so sick. I was so sick. Like I was having hot flushes. I was cold. I was hot. I was sweating. I was shivering. I was like slipping in and out of consciousness. I was like hallucinating the room. Like just did not stop spinning for 9 days. My mum didn't know what was going on with me, and I was just told her I was sick.
Did she not get the doctor out?
Nah. Yeah. I'm just like, oh, yeah. I just got.
After a week, you start to feel better.
Did, yeah. Remember, I didn't know where to start. I'd seen this. I remember I had seen this TV show on Netflix called Love. Have you seen it?
No.
It's about a couple. What they meet, and he's like a normal dude, but she's an alcoholic. And she doesn't realize she's an alcoholic, and then she kind of like figures it out, and it's about her kind of like going into recovery, and then her like relapsing, whatever, and then him being a normal bloke and trying to love her, essentially. She had this app on her phone where she was counting her sober days, and she in the show she relapses, and then she has to restart the clock. And I was like, oh, I wonder if that app's real. So I searched on Google Play Store like for a sobriety app, and I found I Am Sober, that app. And then I started counting. Yeah, I love it. I still use it. I still use it every day.
Yeah.
And then so I started using that, and then I was literally just take it one day at a time.
Yeah.
There was a little community on there, and I wrote journal entries on there, and I interacted with other people who was on the same journey as me. And then people like commented on my post, people who had more sobriety time than me, and they were like cheering me on. And then I remember there was this chef guy on there, and he had like 28 years of sobriety. 28 years, like what the hell? I was like, well, okay, this obviously is a thing then. You know, I thought I was special and different, but no. Other people had this problem apparently. And then and then I was like, so I always take things to extremes, which a lot of people who are like us also do that, all or nothing. So, you know, when I was drinking, I was getting obliterated, you know. So when I was sober, I was going to be the most sober person there was. So I put all my attention on recovery and getting better. You know, I've had a lot of mental health problems in the past, and I've had to recover from them, like going through like bouts of depression, and I've had to recover from them. And I guess it was very similar, like that journey of recovery. Like I knew that I had to look after myself, and I knew that I had to get healthy. So I made that my mission, and I did loads of yoga and meditation, and I read loads of books about healing. I unfollowed all the drinking accounts on Instagram. I was like following loads of like party accounts and stuff. I unfollowed all them, and then I started following sober meme accounts instead.
Yeah.
And they were all really dark and funny and self-deprecating, and I was like, oh, I think these are my people.
Yeah.
And then I started reading about people who felt the same way as I did, who also hated themselves and felt disconnected from the world and didn't know how to relate to people. But then I related to them, and I was like, oh, this is my tribe.
Me about and you know, quite often when I talk to people, it's the subject that comes up a lot is about their self-worth, because I had none. Like I literally I don't think it was your extreme of hating myself as a child, but I didn't like myself. I felt rejected as a child, but once I started drinking, I then began you know, it's like in the beginning, you love it, and it's a party this, party that, and everyone's around you. You're a lad, you're on, whatever. But where I started to drinking at home and solitary drinking is like I started to really go down a rabbit hole there and drink unbelievable amounts, and then you know, it like I've said before, it's like a weird Pink Floyd video, like something weird that I would slip into this void, this world of I don't know what I was doing. Do you know what I mean? But it was comfortable for me. It felt safe in a way because no one could touch me in it. You know?
Yeah.
That's hard to get out of sometimes, you know, because then facing the real world where your emotions are completely bare is really difficult. But for what you went through, to have this, see, it's interesting because you had epiphanies, isn't it? Like when you moved from Berkshire to London, then London to Thailand, Thailand to Australia, all these epiphanies. But the big powerful one was and that did that come from nowhere or?
It came from nowhere, really.
Yeah,
pretty much. I know that like there was I knew someone who had been previously in recovery. So the guy that got me on the old crack, like he was a recovering alcoholic when I met him, and then he decided to relapse, and I was like, oh, I'm going to come with you. Yeah, when I first met him, he was sober and he was in recovery, and he described himself as a recovering alcoholic, and he was the same age as me. He was like a young person, and I was like, what, so you just don't drink, like you just don't do anything? And he was like, yeah. He's like, I'm an alcoholic, I can't drink, like. And then I was like, oh, interesting. So that kind of seed had been planted in my mind. Like I knew that like people could stop drinking, and people my age who had lifestyles similar to mine could live without alcohol.
Yeah.
But then he relapsed and gave me crack, and then I was like, oh, well, this is fantastic. And then we went on a 4-month crack bender together.
Right. And then was it because you had enough of that, then you thought, right, I've got to get back on this not drinking business?
Sorry?
When you went on the that's
yeah.
up. We'll edit that out. So after the 4-month crack bender,
yeah,
did you then decide you'd had enough of that, and then you was going back to sobriety again?
No. So I hadn't tried sobriety like that.
Oh, this was before.
Sorry?
We've lost the plot here.
We lost the plot.
4-month crack bender. Like you said,
I was drinking throughout. This guy that I met, he was sober when I met him.
Yeah.
And then he relapsed, and so I was drinking throughout.
Right.
So when I was hanging out with him, he wouldn't drink, and I was drinking. And then he relapsed, and he was like, "Hey, I'm gonna destroy my life. Do you want to come with me?" And I was like, "Fuck yeah!" And then so I started smoking crack with him. Like I was drinking the entire time, but the fact that when I met him, he was sober. That like this was like it almost this was like 6 months before I got sober.
Yeah.
Okay. Or no more, like 6 to 8 months before I got sober. But meeting him like planted that seed in my mind. Like that was my first kind of exposure to someone who, first of all, like called themselves a recovering alcoholic, and acknowledged the fact that they had a drinking problem, and the first person I met who was in recovery essentially, and especially like young person. And so I kind of thought, oh, okay, that is a thing that people do. And then I just carry on drinking.
Yeah, there's always a seed though. You know, like I've always found it. I say to people that are stopping drinking, you probably find that where you're worried about your friends judging you, one of them one day will come up to you and start asking you questions, because you've planted the seed. Because a lot of the reactions are a mirror of themselves, aren't they? So it's like, so how long have you not drank for now, and what's it like, and how do you do it? And it's like, you know, not that I've got a problem, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how are you? How far into your sobriety are you now?
My sober date is April 1st, 2020. April Fool's Day.
Hey.
When I told like my friends and family, when I was like, I am a raging alcoholic, I'm very depressed, and if I don't stop drinking, I'm gonna die. They were like, April Fools.
Oh,
and
yeah,
I'm like,
of course.
no, I am actually getting sober. I'm stopping drinking.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, you're having a fun. I was like, no, I'm quitting drinking. I'm not gonna drink anymore. They're like, oh, okay. So yeah, everyone thought it was an April Fool's joke. What a thing to joke about, though.
Yeah, I know. So you go to AA, right?
I do.
And you do the STEP program?
I do. I have a sponsor. I do the 12 steps. I'm on step 3.
Oh, well, do you know what? I can really see how that works for you. Because I think you need structure and planning, and you need to stick to something. That's what I see. And
well, yeah, what happened? What happened was is that I was about a year and a half sober, and my first year, I was like, I know now that this is called a pink cloud, right? But I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. All my problems are fixed. Everything's going to be okay. I'm going to live happily ever after, finally. And then that was great. I was like riding on that high of like, I'm sober, I'm healthy, I'm fit, like all this kind of business. My mind's clear. I'm getting to know myself, etc. About a year in, everything came crumbling down.
Yeah.
Like I got really sad again. I got really depressed, and I was doing really bad at work, and they threatened to fire me, and I wasn't getting on with my friends and stuff. And I was like, but I was sober. I wasn't drinking. And I was like, what the fuck's going on here? Like, I've stopped drinking. Why am I still like losing jobs? Why are people pissed off at me? Like, things were supposed to be better. So I realized that for me, just not drinking and it was staying abstinent wasn't enough for me anymore. Like, it wasn't work. Just as how the alcohol stopped working for me, like as a way to run away from my problems. Just staying abstinent and not tending to my alcoholism wasn't working for me anymore. And if I didn't seek outside help, then I was gonna either start drinking again or just be very miserable and sober. But I didn't want to be miserable and sober. I wanted to be happy and sober. So I went from miserable and drunk to miserable and sober, and now I want to pass to sober and happy. And that's what the 12-step program is giving me and is helping me with. It's that mindset change, and it's that rewiring of my brain, so I can better cope with life. So I can do life on life's terms.
Yeah. Your life on your terms as well, because you've been running away from you. You know, like you on paper, it looks like you're running away. I'm going there, I'm escaping, but you're escaping yourself. So when you stop and you have to face the music, a lot of it is about finding out about yourself. And that's a lot of work there, isn't it, for you? Because you've been doing it for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, mine was bloody 40 years. So I had to have therapy. But the main thing for me was to actually stop drinking, so then I could move on to other things. And I sometimes say it depends really on the person, but for me, I had to give up the drinking for a few months first before I could even delve into my feelings. It was too much for me. Made me want to blood again. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you're over 2 years now.
I am. Yeah.
Yeah.
Over 2 years.
And how do you do social situations now then?
Well, just fine. I'm just fine nowadays. When I first got sober, I went for dinner with my mum and her friends. Like, I think I was like, it must have been like 4 months sober, 3 or 4 months. I was like at this restaurant with my mum, and there was loads of wine and loud people who I didn't know, and I just had a panic attack. I had to sleep in the car. It was horrible. But after that, I kind of realized that I had to kind of like ease myself into it. I had to be with people I trusted. I had to be in places that I was comfortable. And I just basically started like building it up. And now I'm absolutely fine in social situations, you know, and going out. And I go to pubs and bars all the time with my friends. All my friends drink, they get drunk. They're really funny. We have a lot of fun, and then I go home early when they all start repeating themselves and getting too loud. That's my cue to leave.
French exit, they call that.
Yeah.
I still don't know what that means really, but it's what it's called.
Yeah. But it just took me a while to get to that place where I was comfortable and I could do that, and I don't worry about going out anymore. I don't I know my triggers, and I know myself well enough now that if I am faced with something, I can deal with it.
And I know it's very much one day at a time thing, but I know that, and the devil's always lurking or whatever. But to you, do you feel like that's it now, or do you feel like you have to do it one day at a time, whatever?
Do you mean, is that it? As in, will I never drink again?
Well, or plan not to.
Plan to. Yeah, I plan not to. Well, is that true? Probably not. Right. So I know that if I'm drinking, then I'm not going to be where I want to be in life, and I am going to be depressed.
Yeah.
And I will have a lot of mental health issues.
Yeah.
That's the reality. So I won't drink again until maybe if I get to old age and I'm like 90 years old,
Have a sherry.
and I have a fucking sherry. I'll have a sherry and some heroin probably. Yeah, you know, if I've achieved everything I want to achieve and I can't lose anything, there's not really going to be any consequences because I'm a 90-year-old woman. Maybe then I'll have a little drinky poos, but I have no plan or no real desire. Yeah, no real desire to start drinking again. Just because I know, like, what comes with drinking. For me, if I take a drink, that is depression, suicidal ideation. That is losing jobs, not losing all my drive and ambition and passion for life, and just absolute misery. And that's really not appealing to me. Like, because it's never going to be just a couple of drinks and a good time and a bit of a dance and a party. Like, that's never going to be it. So I have no desire to be suicidal. So
no, I'm really glad to hear that, actually, Abby.
Yeah. Yeah.
Has helping others help you? Because I'll tell you why I asked you that. You did a live about a month ago, and I don't see a lot of your live for some reason. Whether you don't do a lot, I don't know. I've stopped doing them.
I do a lot.
But you know what? You was on your own, and you was on for a long time, and I watched all of it, and I was so in awe of your empathy in that, because do you know what? You know, on the squares and whatever, you do a lot of reels and whatever, and we all do our own thing. We've all got our own way. And we can come across as these kind of people for the squares and whatever, right? But when you did your live, you got so many questions and you answered them with real compassion. And I was so impressed with how you carried yourself in that hour. I really was. And
thanks, Dave.
Yeah, honestly. And I thought, do you know what? You really, really want to help people not be where you were.
Yeah.
And is that really, like, for me, that helps me a lot, because I went to hell. We all different, we all got different life stories, right? That's why I love doing these podcasts, because one week I do think, Jesus Christ, that blew me away. And then I'll do another one like yours, and it's like, well, that blew me away even more. We all got our own story. It's bespoke to the world, isn't it? You know, the different routes we go down to get where we were then to stop. But how much does that help you to know that you're helping others?
A lot for sure. Like, yeah. Like, it's not what keeps me sober.
No.
But it is a cornerstone. Being in service of other people and helping others to achieve sobriety is like a cornerstone of, like, my, first of all, my sobriety, and then also, like, for my spiritual growth. And for, you know, we understand ourselves, we get to know ourselves through other people. Helping other people helps me understand myself a little better. And I think there's a lot of people like me out there. I never knew there was people that struggled with life and their emotions and just functioning. I didn't know other people, like young women. I didn't know there was people like me out there. And it turns out there is a lot. And by sharing my story and kind of opening discussions and just kind of talking about my shit helps other people feel less alone. And it helps me feel less alone. So some magical things happen when people talk about their trauma. Pretty much.
It's true. And that's why I love doing these podcasts, because it teaches me things as well. Because there's things I relate to and there's things I don't. But it educates me. But it all comes down to the same thing, that we're lost. we're lost in ourselves. We don't know who we are. We're escaping from the real, true authenticity of who we are. And then this is why I say it's a whole new journey of discovery. When you go down this path of sobriety, it's not just giving up drinking. That's the act of drinking. It's about discovering who you really are. And like, I am so different now, 3.5 years later, than I was then.
Yeah.
I was a dickhead, actually.
Me too, Dave.
Yeah, I was a real Jack the Lad, bowl in the pub. Hey, Glugs is here, and like feel really, really loved, and walk out there and they go, dickhead, and then go home, drink a load of Diamond White cider and pass out, and then wake up hating my guts. And then it was like I was an actor on a stage, you know, performing, and then going to a little pokey one bed flat. There were so many people that will relate to that as well, you know.
Yeah, I definitely relate to that. I identify with that so much.
So what's next for you, young lady?
Just I'm really concentrating on my recovery at the moment. Like, I have so much work to do and I've got so far to go. Like, I'm just a bit of a mess, really. And I want to be not a mess, and I want to have a family, and like get married, and I want to have my own family, and I can't do that at the moment because I can't look after myself. So I'm working on my recovery. I'm working on myself so I can get to that point.
But your turnaround is incredible. You've got to give yourself some massive hugs for that, because you were only going one way with that.
Oh my God, yeah. It was death or insanity.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah. Like, so you said about the psych ward and the socks and whatever. You was probably either heading there or for the ground. So you've turned it around, and I believe that was some kind of spiritual awakening you had there. I really believe in that. And I think I had the same as well. And you are working on yourself, and that's a big ask, because you felt shit about yourself for your whole life, but you're doing amazing work. And do you know what? It's a joy to know you, honestly, Abby. It really is. I feel like I feel really lucky to know you. And we've only met once, but I'm sure we'll meet again. But there's some form of connection there. And I'm so grateful for you sharing your story today as well.
Thank you. Thanks for listening.
Turned it around as well, because I think that you will have what you want, because you work hard at your sobriety and that. So positive thinking, right?
That's it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Abby.
Thanks for talking to me. Of course. Thanks, Dave.
Bye.
All right. See ya. Bye.